Welcome to America's Heroes Group.
Well, welcome back to America's Heroes Group. This time our roundtable, Women Veteran Community Outreach. Today is Saturday, August 19th, 2023. August is National Wellness Month. Our host is Cliff Kelley. I'm Sean Claiborne, the co-host, Army National Guard veteran. Our executive producer is Glenda Smith. Our digital media producer is Ivan Ortega of Scott's Arnold Productions. And each year, the cosmetic company L'Oreal Paris launches a nationwide search to find 10 extraordinary women who lead important nonprofit organizations. L'Oreal Paris honors these great leaders by getting behind their causes with training and mentorship, access to centers of influence, and a national platform to educate people about their causes with a $25,000 prize to support their charitable cause. These people, these women, these great leaders are known as L'Oreal Paris Women of Worth. And today we have one of those great women. She is a 2020 honoree. Our panelist today, Stephanie Gattas, U.S. Navy veteran, founder and CEO of the Pink Berets and L'Oreal Paris Women of Worth. How you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you for the wonderful introduction.
My pleasure. Pleasure's all mine. So we met in D.C. maybe, was it last year or this year? It was earlier this year, was it? Time escapes me.
I think it was earlier this year.
Yeah. So we were doing some important work with the AIDPH, announced to try to get the American Institute of Dental Public Health. So we're doing some work there, meeting with people on Capitol Hill. But I want to get into what you do and also the great organization you created, the Pink Berets. So that's an organization, I guess, is centered around therapy, family therapy, individual therapy, group therapy. But tell us more about that. What is that all about?
Absolutely. So, back when the Pink Berets was founded in 2015, there wasn't really anything in place that allowed women to have a center of their own, if you will, a means of healing through their, with them in mind. Mm-hmm. And the way that we created the Pink Berets was to offer some programs that were at no cost, to offer holistic therapy and allow them to have a say in what their healing journey looked like. And so we developed programs that women gravitated to. And over the course of the years, we've learned more and more about what it is that they're looking for in terms of the healing journey. And we're talking about women from all walks of life and different backgrounds. Not everybody that comes to the Pink Berets has trauma. You have women that are looking for camaraderie. You have women that are looking to try something new. It just depends on the individual itself. But really, at the end of the day, the programs are meant to enhance someone's method of healing.
So as a Navy veteran yourself, can you tell me a little bit about what your service meant to you and then what your experience was like? And then what was the transition like from when you went into the military, your military life and experiences, what you learned, and then making that transition back to the civilian world? What did you go through?
Absolutely, and those are great questions. I would have to say that the beginning of my journey, you entered the military with serving your country in mind, right? You want to be a defender. You want to defend your country. And at the beginning, I, had some lofty goals in mind. I wanted to enter different areas of the military through the Navy. It spoke to me. And so that was the first choice that I went with. So I went through boot camp. My first tour was immediately overseas. And then overseas, I deployed, and I was on the USS Simon Lake at the time. The USS Simon Lake was a battle-y ship. It was a commendation that was not really awarded to many ships, so that was something to be proud of. So I would have to say, with that came a level of pride, in being able to serve on a ship like that. But like anything else, I was young, I was inexperienced, and I didn't know what I was up against. And so I found that, being in the military had its challenges, especially for a young lady. And I just found that, you really had to develop thick skin and very quickly. Oftentimes I felt like I was fighting to survive. And I didn't know that entering the military, that's what I was going to have to prepare for.
So when you say, if I can interrupt for one second, when you say fighting for your life, so we're not talking about combat. We're not talking about, somebody launching a cruise missile at your ship. We're talking about people that are around you, who are serving
with you.
Right. Why do you say you had to fight for your life?
Well, fight to survive. is what I said. So it's like the survival of the fittest. So, when I was in the military, when I was in the Navy, I can tell you that there were times where, and I don't know what anybody else's experience was like, so I'm akin this to my experience only. And what I encountered was, a lot of bullying, a lot of sexual harassment, and that ended in a sexual assault. And so I felt like I was just trying to make it through. I was fighting to survive. And that's what I meant by that. So, I found myself getting into altercations with other women. I was going to captain's mast. I was being put on restriction. I mean, you name it. Every time there was an occurrence, something else took place. And so I found that I was just constantly striving to be better, but then I would drop rank. I mean, it was pretty rough. But I will say this, and I've said this before, where it's not the military that I blame. A lot of times it's the people you're serving with, the perpetrators, right? So I don't want, I credit the military for being who I am today in terms of being a servant leader, being taught responsibility, taking accountability. Those are the things that I know I could pull away from having served, right? But it didn't mean that it didn't come with its, set of circumstances in terms of the things that I went through. But I try to empower women in such a way that they know what to prepare for now, that they have a mentor to help guide them as they're preparing to enter the service. I can tell you when I separated from the military, it was a very different environment for me. So I want to say it was difficult to find my footing in terms of knowing where I was going and what I was going to do. So I did end up homeless for a little while. Now, when I say homeless, it's because if you think you're sleeping on a friend's couch, that's not really being homeless. If you're spending the night at a friend's house, that's not really homeless because you have somewhere to sleep. It took time for me to realize I don't have a home. I'm just jumping from place to place, and I'm trying to figure it out still. It was very different then as opposed to the way that it is now, where there are a number of resources available to you. I think then, as you're separating, there's not a whole lot that was provided. So I was in essence left to fend for myself. At least that's the way that I felt when I separated from service. But I can tell you, over time, it was the kind of situation where I would fail and then I would thrive because of the fact that you were taught to overcome and adapt, right? Or adapt and overcome, I should say. So that was what's really brought me to where I am today, in building an organization, leading an organization in hope, because we're not always going to get it right, but in hope that someone like myself, if they're needing that help, if they're needing that guidance, they have an organization like ourselves to help with guidance. And, we're not a one-size-fits-all, like I've said before, but if we can help guide someone to the resources that they're needing, that's what we are in place for.
Now, when I looked at your website, it kind of reminded me of a spa experience in a way, with how it's set up and all the nice images and things you have there. And you refer to your nonprofit organization, 501c3, but you refer to your patrons as clients, I noticed. Tell me about that. How do you see them as clients, and then what are types of services that you provide to them as clients?
Sure. So, a lot of times it's their determination whether or not they want to seek assistance from us. We would tell people we would call them initially participants. And then we had our psychologists say, well, I would say they're clients more so because they get to choose where they want to go. So technically they're a client. They're not being charged for any services, but they get to choose if our organization is a good fit for them. So services like equine therapy or participating in a culinary therapy class where it runs the gamut of what we could offer in culinary, right? Whether it's teaching them a new recipe or being involved in building a charcuterie board or cooking a meal for the Fisher House. There's various ways that we equip the women entering the program with opportunities. It could be an art program. It could be our newly founded archery program. Whatever speaks to them, they in turn become a client of the Pink Berets. Or as now, we're offering an opportunity for them to actually become a member of the Pink Berets. So they're an official Pink Berets, and they attend social activities meant to bring women together.
Now, tell me about the Catalyst. What is that? Describe that for our audience and what that is in your program.
Absolutely. So Catalyst for me is exactly that. I would like to say it's a beacon of hope for the women that are looking to take a weekend to really start to dig deep and learn, what it is that they're seeking or what it is that they want to learn about themselves. It's very retrospective in a way. There's a lot of self-reflecting, meditating. There's opportunities to attend all of our programming under one weekend, meaning that if you have a woman who enters the Catalyst retreat, she's going to have the opportunity to have an equine therapy experience, an art therapy experience, a culinary art experience, a photography art experience, archery programming experience, yoga, meditation, educational and motivational sessions. So the entire weekend is meant to give these women an opportunity to engage, reflect, meditate, but also to really understand what is it that speaks to them. Is equine something I can see helping me? Or is this camaraderie that I'm building with these women something that can help me? If I may, I want to share an example of what happened at our last retreat. Mm-hmm. It was very powerful in its own right. We had one of our team members who operates out of Wyoming fly in for the Catalyst retreat. She's part of the Pink Berets team. She was coming in, helping us set up. We had our rosters. We're setting up rooms for 20 different women that come from all over the United States. And she looked at this roster and she said, this name looks familiar to me. And I was like, oh, okay. Do you know this person? And she says, well, it's impossible for it to be this person. But if it was this person, I served with her about 30 years ago.
You said she was older. What? She did what 30 years ago?
She served with her
30
years ago.
Wow.
And she goes, so I don't know, what are the odds? And I'm thinking like, well, we're about to find out what those odds are, right? The woman arrives. Her name's Debra. She arrives. They look at each other. Their jaw drops, and they go running to one another, and they throw their arms around one another.
Wow.
And they're in tears. They're in tears because they never thought that they would be brought together again.
And it's ironic that they're brought together by the same idea, the same cause.
Yes, exactly. And Janine, whom I spoke to the other day, tells me, do you know that we talk to each other every single day now? They check in on each other. And I thought, this is what the retreat is meant to create and inspire, for women to be able to come together. Now, we know sometimes you can get women together and it isn't always going to fare well, right? But at the Catalyst retreat, the idea is to break down those barriers, right? Mm-hmm. And to become comfortable in trying new things, to become comfortable in sharing your story. And it's definitely at their discretion. We don't, tell anybody, now it's time to tell your story. It's if and when they're ready to do so at all. But really the idea is to create a weekend where they get to feel like there's no expectations, there's no judgment. They're there to heal, purely to heal.
This sounds like, an organization and an idea. I really appreciate how you put everything together so thoughtfully and how everything is structured in such a way that it really does sound enticing. I feel like that everybody at some level needs something like this in their life or have an experience like this in their life. One thing I noticed is that you're in pretty good shape, okay? But culinary as therapy, as arts therapy, that to me I don't know, that would pose a challenge to that, to having a good figure. So tell me, how do you use food and cooking to exercise those demons and try to get therapy and art treatment from that?
So, that to me is I like to say it's my favorite program, because I found that was healing for me. When I was in the kitchen, I found that I was very focused. I was very much in the present. And I explain to people that you're utilizing all your senses when you're involved in the culinary program, right? Your sense of smell, your sight, your hearing, right, is the water boiling. You can see that, but you have to hear what's happening around you as well. And to me, what we ended up developing was a program that allowed people to really focus and hone in on what it was that they were doing, right? Because what do they teach us early on? If you're not paying attention, you can cut yourself, right? At least that's what I teach my children. Like, oh, no, pay attention. You don't want to cut yourself. You don't want to burn yourself. I don't want to burn the house down. You have to be present. And so that's really what we try to teach these women as they're in the kitchen, is really hone in on what's before you, because you can turn that into art. I mean, we've made things from beef ribs to goat cheese potatoes to appetizers with rosemary and honey and green apples on a crostini, and it just, you run the gamut of all the things that we do, but the idea is that they're creating art in the process, and they're paying it forward as well. So we break bread together, but the idea is that we take that food and we provide it to somebody in need. Wow. So there's also that action
so when
where
you say provide somebody in need, so you actually take it to people that are hungry or homeless. Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, not necessarily just homeless, although we have done that before. So the example I shared earlier was about cooking for the Fisher House. So the Fisher House opened their doors for us to be able to go in and utilize their kitchen, right? We don't have a test kitchen ourselves. So we use their kitchen as a test kitchen for the program. And there's 2 stoves, 2 ovens, or double ovens, huge countertop. And so we're in there providing the programming. But in turn, after the ladies have also served themselves, they're serving those that haven't had dinner. So one thing that the ladies had done is they took a number of to-go boxes across the street to the hospital to bring to the family members who were bedside with their wounded warrior. And I remember the woman saying, it was great to be able to come in and cook, but the most pivotal part of the program for me was being able to give back, like to have that sense of purpose. And so hearing that, I thought, wow, you never really know what this program is going to mean to somebody and why. And so culinary itself, I mean, it just honestly depends on what you put into it. And I think that's kind of where we landed. It's not so much about the food itself, but, what does it do for you mentally?
I think food makes everything better in a nutshell.
Yes, it does.
I'd probably be like 400 pounds if I was doing what you were doing. So now also, you mentioned some equine arts as well. So horses. So how did you get your horses, and how do you take care of the horses? And tell me about that program, because that sounds really interesting too.
Oh gosh. So, we didn't create the equine program itself. It was behind research and other programs that I saw were utilizing equine therapy as a healing method, right? As a holistic approach to healing. And when I say holistic, we mean there was no medicinal intervention. This was as holistic as it gets, right? You were going to do some groundwork with the horses and the facilitator. And in this case, early on, we had a woman, especially in Bernie, it's a small town, and I had explained to somebody that I wanted to start an equine therapy program as an extension of what we do at the Pink Berets. And I'm talking, this was like newly founded. And we had this lady who had a ranch in Bernie, and she trained horses and took them to show in competitions for a living. So she travel all over the United States. And so she explained to another young lady who shared what I was planning on doing, that we wanted to build an equine program. And she said, well, I was actually going to donate a horse that was a little under 2 years old to a therapy center in Dallas, but they never returned her call. She goes, so if this girl's interested, me being this girl, she can come take a look at the horse and we'll donate the horse. And in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, well, what's the possibility of this? And so I connect with the lady. I visited her at her ranch. She introduced us to our first horse named Slick. And she said, he's supposed to be a show horse, but he has something that's wrong with his leg, and I can't take him with us on travel to show him. And so I distinctly remember thinking, like, this horse, which was part thoroughbred, and thoroughbreds are really huge horses. Okay? So I remember thinking, like, wow, like, this can't really be happening. But sure enough, she got someone to bring the horse over to a boarding facility that we were going to lease at, and next thing you know, we kicked off our equine therapy program with our first horse.
Wow.
And so that really gave us an opportunity to learn more about what this equine program meant, the power of equine therapy. And I can tell you, I didn't know much about it. The facilitators that came into the program taught me a lot about what it meant to facilitate an equine therapy program. You have to have, the women that we had in place were women that were licensed and certified and had an extensive amount of experience in equine therapy. And so building a team to facilitate the equine therapy was a very critical component of the program, right? If you wanted a program, you had to have the right people in place. And so at the time we launched with, a team of people who had experience, and in turn, the women that started entering the program in the early rise of the equine program were then giving us feedback and telling us the impact that it was making for them. And that's when we realized we're charting the right course, right? We're definitely on the right path in terms of the programs that we want to offer. We know people love to eat, not always cook, but they love to eat. So the culinary program is a good option. Equine therapy is proving to have an impact on the lives of these women. Art therapy was another program that we knew was, something where, this tactile opportunity was giving these women to engage again in the present. And so again, these programs like equine therapy were teaching us along the way. And lo and behold, the horses were the teachers, which was really interesting to me because people would say, oh, yeah, the horse is going to teach you. And I'd be like, oh, my gosh, that's so funny. But when you're involved and you're interacting, it's true because the horse shares the same limbic system as we do, and it can pick up your heartbeat from feet away, and it knows if you're happy, if you're sad, if you're anxious, if you're angry. It picks up all of those emotions, and then it serves as a reflection of those emotions. And so it was very interesting in terms of what it meant to heal through a horse that you were partnered with. So I'd have to say that for me, the program in itself has not just allowed us to see how it can impact others, but it has impacted us in return, knowing that it's not just about helping people and guiding people towards healing, but you're healing yourself in the process.
Wow.
Because they don't know what's coming.
Right. Now, we have a couple more minutes left. We don't have a lot of time left, but I wanted to get into what it was like for you to be nominated and then honored as a L'Oreal Paris Woman of Worth. What was that process like, and how did you get connected with the organization?
Well, I can tell you it was very surreal because when they first contacted me, and this is a running joke between me and a few of my friends, is when they first contacted me, I dismissed it. I was like, oh, okay, sure. And I dismissed it. And then they contacted me again, and they said, there's a timeline in which you have to fill out the nomination forms that we sent to you since you were nominated. And I was like, oh, okay, again, put it off. And they contacted me again, and they said, we would really like for you to submit your forms. And I was like, okay, this is real. and put in all my forms. And then they said, okay, there's going to be a process that's involved. Once you've been nominated, you submit your paperwork, and then the L'Oreal team in New York comes together with one of their committees, and then they start the selection process. But again, this process takes months. Mm-hmm. Long story short, after a very long process, they contacted me via telephone and congratulated me and let me know I was one of the top 10 that was selected as a woman of worth.
Wow.
And the
how did you feel when you heard that news?
Oh my gosh, I cried. I did. I cried because it told me that we were now recognized on a global level, right? Because L'Oreal is a global company. Mm-hmm. And this global company took into account what it is that we do, understood our mission, embraced our mission, and felt that we needed to be nominated. But it was elevating our opportunity to tell our story on a national platform because 2020, right? That's when COVID hit. And so instead of bringing us to New York to film our stories, for the first time in 15 years, L'Oreal was partnering with NBC to come visit us in our hometowns and film our programs.
Wow.
And so NBC came down to Burning. They filmed Equine. They filmed Culinary. They filmed art. Like they found a lot of what we did fascinating, and they filmed it. And then the day before Thanksgiving, they did a NBC special and showcased me and the 9 other women that were selected.
That's really great. I really appreciate your story. Honored by none other than the world's largest cosmetic company, L'Oreal Paris. Thanks for your time.
Well, thank you for giving me an opportunity to share a story. I'm honored.
Stephanie Gattas, U.S. Navy veteran. This is America's Heroes Group. We'll be right back.